I chose to do my artist biography on Dream Theater. They're an American progressive metal band, and they're often regarded as the masters of their genre and probably my favorite band, so I got the shirt on. But progressive metal is highlighted by its complex compositions and time signatures, its incorporations of other genres, instruments such as the keyboard and the orchestra. And the orchestra, too, is more common in death metal, but the other things aren't used like they are in progressive metal, which also sets it apart from the rest of metal genres, which there's a million of them. And one of the main things is its musicians' expertise, the experience of the guitarists and the drummers. They're usually on, you could say, the next level compared to maybe just metalcore or new metal or whatever. And it's cited as the most talented metal genre generally. And another thing for some background, my grandpa, Ardash Martirosian, was the head trombonist at the Lyric Opera House in Chicago. He played in Warsaw Brass and West Side Story and a lot of those big musicals, and he traveled with the big bands, as they call them. And I didn't know him too well because he died when I was 7 or 8. And when he heard Dream Theater, he absolutely loved them. And to hear that from somebody who was as musically connected as he was, that he loved their time signatures or polyrhythms when they used orchestras, whatever it was, to hear that from somebody like him made me realize, like, this band is the real deal. And I grew up listening to them, and they're my favorite band. I love them. Now, going over the 5 current members of the band, starting with James Labrie, the vocalist. Kevin James Labrie is his full name. He's the lead singer for Dream Theater, and he was born on May 5th, 1963 in Penetanguishene, Ontario. From a very young age, he was always musically connected, as his parents tell stories of him singing anything he could on the radio, even at 3 years old. Even though he didn't know the words, he sung along with the melodies perfectly, and it seemed like he had that gene in him. And he began playing drums at 5 years old, and by his early teenage years, he was already singing and playing drums in several small local bands. And he knew that singing was his true passion, and he began taking professional coaching singing classes at age 21, where he was then notified that a New England-based band called Dream Theater was looking for a singer, and he was the perfect fit. He also has an extremely vast musical taste, and his favorite composers are Mozart, Beethoven, and Vivaldi, as well as his favorite bands Aerosmith, Metallica, Judas Priest, Van Halen, and Journey. And amongst the metal community, he's regarded as the guy in progressive metal, the biggest pioneer, the greatest vocalist in the genre's history. Next is the guitarist John Petrucci. His full name, John Peter Petrucci. He was born on July 12th, 1967 in Kings Park, New York, and he began playing guitar at 12 years old with influences such as Stevie Ray Vaughan, Al Di Meola, Steve Howe, Alan Holdsworth, bands like Rush, Iron Maiden, and Metallica, along with several others. And as a guitar player himself, Petrucci has been a cover feature on several guitar publications, including 2 issues of Guitar World, March 2019, December 2021, and Guitar Player in January 2020. And he's also been named numerous times as the best guitarist in multiple magazines, as well as being voted the #1 guitarist in the UK's Prog magazine, the #1 guitarist in the world by Music Radar, and the #1 guitarist in Japan's Burn magazine. He also received the SENA Performers European Guitar Award at the prestigious annual event held in Bergen op Zoom in the Netherlands. And this is a small chunk of his endless list of accolades, as his solo career speaks for itself, and even his self-produced solo albums have done great on their own and continue to add to his seemingly never-ending legacy. Next up is John Myung, the bassist. John Myung was born on January 24th, 1967 in Chicago, Illinois, but grew up in Kings Park, New York, and is a descendant of Korean heritage. He began his musical journey by playing the violin at age 5, but was given the chance to play electric bass in a small local band at age 15, which he took. He and his high school friend, John Petrucci, who we just covered, enrolled at the Berklee College of Music, where they would go on to meet future bandmate Mike Portnoy. And they originally called themselves Majesty, which was switched over to Dream Theater shortly before they released their first album. Myung has also participated in several other bands throughout his illustrious career, including progressive metal / alternative groups such as Platypus, Jelly Jam, and despite his success, He is known as the mysterious member of Dream Theater due to his quiet demeanor and his shy tendencies, which is almost typical for most bassists and metal bands, funny enough, but he's a cornerstone in the development of progressive metal. Next up is Jordan Rudess, the keyboardist, who was born on November 4th, 1956 in Great Neck, New York, and he's the keyboardist for Dream Theater, and he's regarded as one of, if not the most virtuosic and innovative keyboardists in progressive metal and rock. And he also has a solo music career where he has released multiple solo albums that have done very well on their own. He was voted Best New Talent by Keyboard Magazine and led to his invitation to join Dream Theater, which he accepted in 1999. And before this, however, he had already collaborated with John Petrucci and Mike Portnoy, and even the bassist of King Crimson, Tony Levin, to form Liquid Tension Experiment. The two albums that they put out pushed the limits of progressive metal, and he has also appeared on Dream Theater's live albums and DVDs, including several live scenes from places like New York and Breaking the Fourth Wall, the latter of which received #1 on the Billboard charts. His impact on the technological part of progressive metal is completely unmatched and is like no other. Last up for current bandmates is Mike Portnoy, the drummer, who was born on April 20th, 1967 in Long Beach, New York. And he was the drummer for Dream Theater from 1985 to 2010 and later rejoined the band in 2023 and is currently with them. And he's best known for his technical prowess and innovative approach to drumming. And as a drummer myself, I grew up listening to Portnoy, and I've been very inspired by his work, especially his specific and complex time signatures that sound almost random when played. And he has received multiple awards from the Modern Drummer magazine, as well as dozens of other accolades that would take over an hour to list out. And amongst the metal community, he's regarded as one of, if not the greatest drummer of all time, including my opinion. And his other projects also speak for themselves, as well as his work with other groups such as Transatlantic, the Winery Dogs, and Liquid Tension Experiment. And his 25-year tenure with the band from 85 to 2010 was simply incredible, and he did things that the metal community has never seen drummers do before. For past band members, Mike Mangini was the drummer from 2011 to 2023. He, along with Mike Portnoy, is my favorite personal favorite drummer, I should say, because of his, like I said, his unique time signatures and the crazy polyrhythms that sound impossible to play, and I definitely can't play them, but hopefully one day could. Kevin Moore was the keyboardist from 1986 to 1994. Derek Sharanayan was also a keyboardist from 1995 to 1999, and Charlie Dominici was the vocalist from 1987 to 1989. Some examples of music, and here's a clip from their song Octavarium off of the album Octavarium. It's a 24-minute song, but it's probably my favorite song by them, and just the crazy time signatures that they play with, whether it's 3/8, 5/8, 7/8, or 11/16. It sounds incredible, and the layering and the coordination is perfect, and I'll throw the clip up. The next clip is from Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory, which is possibly my favorite album by them. I don't know if I could pick one, but the song itself is Scene 7, The Dance of Eternity. But anyway, the album is broken up into Act 1 and Act 2, and the album opens with Nicholas, a troubled man who's undergoing past life regression therapy, and he gets into a sense of hypnosis by a hypnotherapist, and he begins to see a girl named Victoria Page who was murdered, and he starts to believe that he discovers rather that he was Victoria in a past life, and he starts to believe that Victoria is haunting him to reveal the truth about her murder. And he recalls that Victoria distanced herself from her lover Julian Baines due to his drinking and gambling addictions, and she sought comfort in Julian's brother Edward Baines and began an affair with him. Nicholas then assumes that Julian, out of jealousy, murdered her and then killed himself, a story supported by a newspaper covering the events which cites a witness's testimony. However, Nicholas begins to doubt this version of events and converses with an older man who was more familiar with the case, and Nicholas realizes that he will never be able to move on with his own life until he solves her murder. Act 2 opens by describing Julian's addictions to gambling and cocaine, which drives Victoria away from him, and Edward feels guilty about deceiving his brother, but decides that his love for Victoria is stronger than his guilt, and he seduces her when she is vulnerable following her breakup, which is in Home and The Dance of Eternity, the songs. And after visiting Edward's old house, Nicholas believes he has solved the mystery. Julian had to beg Victoria for forgiveness, and when rebuffed, killed both her and Edward, then positioned himself as the witness in the newspaper article One Last Time, again a song off the album. Nicholas comes to terms with what had happened and bids farewell to Victoria, and the hypnotherapist then ends the session at the point, and despite pleas from Victoria's memories, in the song Spirit Carries On, the narrative shifts to Edward's perspective, revealing that he wished his romance with Victoria was more than a simple affair. And as Victoria begins to reconcile with Julian, Edward confronts the two of them, murders them, and then stages the scene and assumes the role of the witnesses for the newspaper column. The flashback includes Edward telling Victoria to open her eyes before killing her, echoing the same words the hypnotherapist used to wake Nicholas from his hypnotic trance in the song Finally Free, which that album just so beautifully tells a story, and each song plays into each other, and it's one of the best just musical things that I've ever seen. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to listen to it and understand it because the songs are longer, and it just blows my mind every time. And the musical composer that Dream Theater shares the most similarities with from our textbook and the chapters that we covered, from my opinion, is Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. And this is more due to the impact that he had on the genre rather than the direct relation of grunge to progressive metal. although there are some similar elements, they're not really similar much at all. But like I said, more of the pioneer that he was for grunge is similar to how James LaBrie and Dream Theater are for progressive metal, because nobody has done an impact and pushed progressive metal to be what it is today, and it wouldn't be what it is today without Dream Theater.